The Galactic Empire hovered above the charred remnants of Earth, its fleet an ominous display of power and dominance. A broadcast echoed across the globe, reaching every corner where survivors dared to cling to hope. The alien language translated effortlessly into human tongues, dripping with disdain. "This is Grand Strategist Zeller of the Galactic Empire. Your pitiful resistance has been noted and summarily dismissed. Primitive species, such as yours, are destined to bow before superior might." The voice was smooth but mocking, the words slicing through the bleak silence like a blade. The holographic display showed Zeller, his elongated features twisted in a smirk. Behind him, the Empire's flagship loomed, an enormous vessel bristling with advanced weaponry and shields that glimmered with an almost imperceptible sheen. He continued, his tone almost playful. "We've studied your relics. Rusted tanks, outdated missiles, mechanical artillery. These antiques belong in museums, not on battlefields. Your kind should take solace in knowing you'll serve a greater purpose as we assimilate your resources. Resistance is amusing, but ultimately futile. Deep underground, in a hidden bunker tucked within the rubble of a once thriving city, a small group of human resistance fighters huddled around a flickering screen. The room was dark, lit only by the faint blue glow of monitors and the dim overhead bulbs powered by scavenged energy cells. Captain Elena Ford leaned against a metal table, her sharp eyes fixed on the broadcast. She was a figure of calm authority amidst the chaos, her posture unwavering even as others shifted uncomfortably. Her dark, grease-streaked hair framed a face lined by years of battle and loss. "Superior might," she muttered under her breath, her voice laced with sarcasm. Her lips curled into a faint smile, the kind that carried more defiance than amusement. "They really don't know what they're dealing with." Beside her, a younger fighter, Logan, shifted nervously. "Captain, their shields are impenetrable. We've thrown everything we had at them, missiles, drones, even what was left of our energy weapons. Nothing's worked." Elena's gaze didn't waver. She tapped a finger on the table, where a blueprint lay partially unrolled. The lines and curves were archaic, a relic of another era. "They're not invincible, Logan. They're arrogant. They've built their empire on assumptions that make them blind." The room fell silent. The other fighters exchanged uncertain glances, their faith shaken by years of defeat. Yet Elena's voice carried a conviction that cut through their doubt. "They've forgotten the basics," she continued. "Their shields are designed to counter energy weapons, plasma strikes, things they consider modern. But what happens when you throw something at them that doesn't rely on their fancy calculations? Something simple, something old." Logan frowned. "Old like what?" Elena's smirk widened, and for the first time, there was a glimmer of hope in her expression. She stepped back, gesturing to a dusty corner of the room. Hidden beneath a tarp, an unmistakable shape loomed, its silhouette both familiar and forgotten. "Old like that." As the tarp was pulled away, the resistance members stared in stunned silence. What lay before them wasn't sleek or advanced. It was battered, worn by time, but unmistakably human, a howitzer. The howitzer stood as a relic of a bygone era, its weathered surface telling tales of battles long past. Its design was unapologetically mechanical, sturdy, straightforward, and devoid of the complexities that define the Empire's technology. The room was silent, save for the faint hum of equipment and the murmurs of disbelief from the gathered fighters. "This..." Logan's voice broke the quiet, his tone hovering between skepticism and awe. "You're telling me this is supposed to save us?" Elena ran a hand along the cold steel, her expression resolute. "It's not just a weapon. It's a statement. They've forgotten that simplicity is strength." She tapped the barrel lightly. "This old beauty doesn't rely on electronics or energy grids. No signals to intercept, no systems to disable. Just raw force." Another fighter, Nora, crossed her arms, her doubt evident. Force against shields that can deflect anything we've thrown at them? Captain, we've seen what happens to kinetic rounds. They disintegrate the second they hit that energy barrier. Elena nodded, already anticipating the question. That's because we've been using standard rounds, conventional ammo built for a world that never expected to face something like this. But this time, we're fighting on our terms. She gestured to a small workbench where modified shells lay in neat rows. The rounds were unlike anything the Empire had encountered. Coated in tungsten and reinforced with human ingenuity, these shells have been re-engineered. Tungsten cores, heavier payloads, optimized trajectories. Once these hit their shields, they won't deflect. They'll punch through. The room filled with a mix of quiet murmurs and the faint spark of hope. The veterans among them, those who had fought in Earth's earlier conflicts, seemed to understand the power of what they were seeing. For the younger fighters, this was a crash course in humanity's legacy, a reminder of the creativity and determination that had defined their species. Let me make this clear, Elena continued, her voice steady. We're not trying to match their technology. That's a game we'll never win. What we're doing is exploiting their weakness, arrogance. They think kinetic weapons are obsolete, so they've designed shields that don't prioritize them. That oversight is their undoing. As her words sank in, the group got to work. The howitzer was old, but not beyond repair. Bolts were tightened, gears lubricated, and decades of grime cleaned away. Each fighter found a role, hauling ammunition, adjusting targeting equipment, or running simulations based on trajectories calculated by hand. The process was grueling, a race against time as the Empire's fleet began maneuvering into lower orbit. Every tremor in the ground reminded them of the enemy's looming presence. But amidst the sweat and strain, there was a palpable shift in the air. For the first time in months, perhaps years, the resistance wasn't just reacting. They were preparing to strike. By the time the howitzer was ready, the group was battered but determined. Elena stood before them, her voice calm yet commanding. This isn't just about survival. This is about proving we're not done. They've dismissed us as relics. Now, we'll show them what relics can do. The first shell roared out of the howitzer, its sound deafening even deep within the bunker. It shot skyward, a streak of fire against the night. For a moment, the fighters held their breath, watching its trajectory on the grainy monitors. Then it struck. A distant explosion lit up the horizon as one of the Empire's smaller frigates disintegrated in a fiery cascade of metal and energy. The shield, once thought impervious, had failed. The room erupted in cheers, but Elena's voice cut through the noise like a blade. Reload. We've only just started. The team worked with frantic precision. Ammunition was hauled into position, the barrel adjusted, calculations made by hand in real time. Each step was a dance of survival, the howitzer moving like a living relic brought back to life by sheer human will. Above, the Empire's fleet was in disarray. Inside his flagship, Zeller stared at the tactical displays in stunned silence. His voice, usually calm and condescending, now carried an edge of disbelief. What just happened? A subordinate scrambled to respond. One of our frigates was destroyed. The impact bypassed our shields. It appears to have been a kinetic weapon. Kinetic? Zeller repeated, the word foreign on his tongue. How is that possible? Primitive technology shouldn't. He stopped mid-sentence, his expression hardening. Find the source. Eliminate it immediately. On the ground, the howitzer fired again. This time, the shell struck a destroyer, tearing through its hull and setting off a chain reaction that obliterated the ship. Each explosion above sent shockwaves of hope through the resistance fighters, but it also brought retaliation. The Empire's ships began focusing fire on the general area of the howitzer. Blinding beams of energy scorched the earth, shaking the bunker with each near miss. Dust and debris rained down, and the fighters pressed on, ignoring the growing cracks in the walls. "Adjust by 3 degrees, Elena commanded, her voice calm despite the chaos. "We're targeting the cruiser next." The team obeyed, without hesitation. The howitzer roared once more, and moments later, another ship fell from the sky. But the Empire was adapting. Drones swarmed the atmosphere, scanning for the source of the attacks, while larger ships recalibrated their shields. "They're closing in," Logan shouted, his eyes darting between monitors. Elena didn't flinch. "Then we work faster. Next target." Mark the flagship. The tension in the room was palpable. The flagship was the heart of the fleet, heavily armored and shielded, its destruction a long shot even with their success so far. But Elena knew the psychological blow it would deliver. As the team prepared the final shot, a nearby blast shook the bunker violently. Several fighters were thrown off balance, and a support beam groaned ominously. "Focus," Elena barked, pulling them back from despair. "This is our moment. Make it count." The final shell was loaded, its weight heavier than all the others, not because of its mass, but because of what it represented. The howitzer fired, its roar defiant against the chaos. The flagship loomed in the monitors, the shell racing toward it like a promise of retribution. The shell struck the flagship with unerring precision. For a fraction of a second, the impact seemed inconsequential, the shield shimmering as if absorbing the blow. Then, cracks spiderwebbed across the energy barrier, and the projectile broke through, slamming into the ship's reactor core. A blinding flash of light followed, brighter than any star in the sky. The flagship erupted in a catastrophic explosion, its enormous frame disintegrating into fragments that scattered across the void. The shockwave rippled outward, causing nearby Empire ships to veer off course, some colliding in the chaos. In the bunker, the fighters stared at the monitors in stunned silence. The flagship, the symbol of the Empire's dominance, was gone. A slow cheer began, growing into a roar as the realization hit. They had done it. Elena leaned against the howitzer, her chest rising and falling as she caught her breath. The ground shook less frequently now, the intensity of the bombardment waning as the remaining Empire ships began retreating. Their formation was broken, their morale shattered. On the Empire's bridge, Zeller struggled to comprehend what had just happened. The tactical displays showed a chaotic mess of retreating ships and disrupted communications. His once composed demeanor had crumbled, replaced with fury and desperation. "Pull the fleet back," he barked, his voice trembling. "We can't sustain this loss." "Regroup, N." He stopped himself, realizing the futility of the command. The humans had done the impossible. As the fleet retreated into the blackness of space, Elena and her team emerged from the battered bunker. The howitzer was scorched and dented, its barrel still smoking, but it stood as a testament to their resilience. Around them, the landscape bore the scars of the Empire's assault, yet the air was thick with something unexpected: hope. Logan stepped forward, staring at the sky where the fleet had once loomed. "They're leaving," he said, his voice disbelieving. "We actually drove them off." Nora let out a shaky laugh, wiping dirt from her face. "Guess they didn't think a bunch of relics could fight back." Elena remained silent, her eyes fixed on the horizon. The victory was undeniable, but it came at a cost. Lives lost, cities reduced to rubble, and a planet forever changed. Yet amidst the destruction, humanity had proven its worth, not just to the Empire, but to itself. "They underestimated us," Elena finally said, her voice firm. "They won't make that mistake again. But now, neither will we." The message of their defiance spread far beyond Earth. Across the galaxy, whispers of the Empire's defeat reached the ears of oppressed civilizations. Humanity, the species they had dismissed as weak and primitive, had struck a blow that shook the foundations of galactic order. Resistance movements began to stir, emboldened by the knowledge that the mighty empire could bleed. As the sun rose over the ruins, the fighters began gathering what remained, preparing for the battles yet to come. The howitzer, battered but victorious, stood like a monument to the indomitable spirit of a species that refused to fade into history.